Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kara, and I'm with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and I'll be your host for this webinar. Today's webinar is ODOT's Safe Routes to School 2026 application focused, and we're excited to have Kate Hartley as our presenter today. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items to ensure a smooth webinar experience for everyone. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the questions panel on your screen. You can type your questions there and we'll address them either as we can during the presentation or during the dedicated Q&A session at the end. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have any other issues, please feel free to use the chat panel to communicate with our team, and we will do our best to assist you. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all registered attendees after the session. All right, with that out of the way, let's get started. It's my pleasure to hand it over to Kate. Kate, the virtual floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Kara. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Hartley. I manage our Safe Routes to School program here at ODOT, and excited to spend the next hour just going over the program, talking a little bit about becoming eligible to apply, talking about projects that are eligible for Safe Routes to School funding, how to apply, some key resources, and then spending some time going over any questions that you have, as well as some frequently asked questions. So I'm going to turn my camera off, but just wanted to say hello, show you that I'm here, and we will get started. Like Kara said, feel free to add questions to the question panel throughout, and I might try to stop along the way to answer some of them. So just to get us started, a quick overview of Safe Routes to School. I do like to kind of open this up, letting people know that Safe Routes to School is really a global approach. So ODOT doesn't own the term Safe Routes to School. This is something that communities all over the world are working on. It's really an approach that promotes walking or biking to school through infrastructure improvements, enforcement tools, safety education, incentives that encourage people to walk or bike. And these, plans and programs and initiatives have a ton of benefits. They can reduce traffic around schools, improve safety for students, improve air quality, increase levels of physical activity. And because of all of these benefits, there are often tons of different types of partners and organizations and agencies who get involved and who kind of spearhead this work in their community. So there's all kinds of Safe Routes to School programs going on across the state of Ohio, some of which might be leveraging money from ODOT, others of which are just locally supported. And so just wanted to kind of cover that to some extent. And we know that Safe Routes to School programs are important because kids are facing disconnected routes to school that make it dangerous or difficult or simply less desirable to walk or bike to school. We know that in many of our communities, sidewalks may be disconnected or deteriorating, or there may not be good, well-connected bicycle facilities to help people bike to school, and simply building infrastructure may not be enough on its own to make walking or biking a practical choice for families. It may be important to be changing the built environment, creating those connections, and also doing other types of supportive programming and outreach to really make walking and biking the kind of safe and easy choice. So to help with this, ODOT allocates money every year to our Safe Routes to School program, about $5 to $8 million each year. This funding program is focused on funding planning, development, and the implementation of projects and activities that enable and encourage K through 12 students to walk or bike to school. Project funding can be used for both or for either infrastructure projects as well as non-infrastructure projects, which is somewhat unique for the program. And there's a lot of local and state and federal money that can be used to fund infrastructure like sidewalks or bike lanes, things like that. This program is targeting local communities who are really trying to move the needle on kids walking and biking to school. And so we're looking to fund projects for communities who have really assessed those biggest barriers, proposed solutions that are really going to move the needle, and who are looking to implement a variety of projects, both infrastructure and non-infrastructure, to get more kids walking and biking to school. Some other funding programs you might be familiar with that also can fund standalone ped bike projects from ODOT include the Transportation Alternatives Program and the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So just a couple of other examples. For local governments that are inside of a metropolitan planning organization boundary, there's some additional federal resources that flow through your MPO, which are also eligible for bicycle and pedestrian standalone projects. And so just want you to know that in the world of pedestrian and bicycle funding, there's a lot of different opportunities. This program is really focused on helping communities who are really robustly looking to address challenges for kids getting to and from school and walking and biking specifically. And because of that, the program does have some pretty specific eligibility requirements, which I'm going to get into in just a moment. Anybody can become eligible to apply, whether you are inside of or outside of an MPO, and it's really a pretty competitive program. Before I jump into how to become eligible to apply, I do just want to point out to you that we have a portion of our website called the 2026 Safe Routes to School Guidance. This is really the most comprehensive overview of the program. It's the basis for this slideshow. It goes over everything you need to know about the program, eligibility, how much funding is available, when it's available, what's eligible, what's ineligible. And then at the end of this guidance, there's also appendices which go over the scoring rubric that we use, a list of the application questions, and a convenient list of the required attachments for each of the 3 applications. So all of this is what I'm about to go over, but I just want you to know that when this webinar is over, this is the best resource for you to look to for kind of an overview or questions that you may have related to the program. So let's get started with talking about becoming eligible to apply, because I did mention that there are some specific requirements in order to become eligible to apply to the program. So I'm going to go over 4 key requirements. First of all, any project must serve the stated purpose of the Safe Routes to School program, obviously. So only projects that are directly connecting kids to and from school from their home are going to be eligible to apply to the program. The other thing that's important to note is that in order for you to be eligible to apply for a project, your projects have to be identified in a plan. These plans have a few requirements. They have to be updated within the last 5 years. They have to engage school stakeholders and the community. The plans have to outline both infrastructure and non-infrastructure recommendations, and your plan has to be approved by your ODOT District Safe Routes to School Coordinator. So you'll send these plans to your District Safe Routes to School Coordinator. They'll take a look at them and confirm if you're eligible to apply, or if not, what might be needed in order to become eligible. Typically, these plans that people use to become eligible are school travel plans, which the image on the right is a template for developing a school travel plan. But you can also use other types of plans that check these boxes to become eligible. So if you've done other types of planning that outline specific bicycle and pedestrian projects, including those around schools, and you already have captured community feedback, perhaps from parents or school stakeholders, you may be able to use that plan to become eligible. The other 2 things you'll need are 2-mile radius maps. This is an example on the right. So if you're going to apply for a project, we need to have a map of the schools that are impacted by the project that you're proposing at a minimum. So if you do a school travel plan, it's likely that you'll have these maps developed for all the schools that you include in your plan. But if you are looking to supplement a different type of plan to become eligible, at a minimum, you'll need to develop these maps for any schools for which you're going to submit projects for through the application. And then the other thing you'll have to have is an estimate of typical walking and biking rates to that school, and caregiver input must be documented. Typical ways to achieve this include using the ODOT parent or caregiver survey and the ODOT student travel tally form. But you can use other types of strategies for collecting this information. You can develop your own surveys. You can interview staff and parents, hold focus groups. There's other ways you can capture this information, but you'll need to supplement it. The plan you do will either need to have done this, or you'll need to kind of supplement your plan with this information to make it eligible to apply. And all of this information is required content in order to submit an application anyways. So getting this information will make, and supplementing this to your plan will make you eligible to apply, but you'll also need to submit this information in your application. Let's see. Okay. And so just to review, the most common way to become eligible is through a school travel plan. But if you have another type of plan that is checking these boxes and can be supplemented with maps and information on current walking and biking rates and parent and caregiver input, that can all be sent to your ODOT District Safe Routes to School coordinator for them to let you know if you're eligible to apply. So moving on, I'll just talk about what projects are eligible through the program. I mentioned that the program is unique in that we provide funding for both non-infrastructure and infrastructure. So for non-infrastructure project funding, the program makes up to $60,000 a year. And you can apply for a 1-year or a 2-year non-infrastructure project. So $60,000 per year, that could be up to $120,000 for a 2-year project. This funding is available next year. So for us, that's federal fiscal year 27, which starts in July. And funds are intended to develop and implement projects that are sustainable. So we're looking to support new projects and programs that you'll be able to sustain into the future, and not require ongoing 100% funding from ODOT to continue. If you're interested in applying for non-infrastructure funds, the applicants can be a variety of agencies. They can be a political subdivision, meaning like a city, township, county, village. They can also be other political subdivisions, could include school districts, health districts, even park districts. It's also possible that other nonprofits that are like affiliated with a local government or a school could become eligible as well. So for example, we've funded projects before at like a YMCA that is associated with a particular city who's doing programming for a particular school district. And ODOT can provide, can reimburse up to 100% of the eligible costs. Our non-infrastructure projects do function as a reimbursement. So the local applicant will be making purchases, buying materials perhaps, and then invoicing ODOT for reimbursement on a like quarterly or monthly basis. Here's just a couple of examples for non-infrastructure projects. These could include things like educational curriculums, community campaigns, walking school bus programs, remote drop-off programs, crossing guard programs, events such as walk to school day or bike rodeos. There's a large amount of flexibility here to build a case for a compelling non-infrastructure project that you think is really going to move the needle on walking and biking at your school. So lots of opportunity here. There's a very small list of things that are ineligible, which I'll go over, but there's, yeah, a lot of flexibility for you to get creative and to propose programs, projects, host events, do trainings that you think are really going to address the barriers or challenges to walking and biking to school in your community. Over the past couple years, we've also emphasized or sort of made some things newly eligible. One thing we've emphasized as part of the non-infrastructure application is you can apply for materials and staff time for quick build projects. So these would be projects where you could quickly kind of design and purchase low-cost materials to really rapidly change the built environment. And we consider a quick build project, you know, something that is still going to last at least like 1 to 3 years, could be more. But again, these are things that you could install very quickly. The example here is a thermoplastic bump out with some flex posts to do sort of this quick build bump out to shorten the crosswalk at this intersection in Cincinnati. And then over the past few years, we have made bicycles for training related purposes eligible if you need those for training. So you cannot use these funds to purchase bicycles to give away or to give away as prizes or anything like that. But they can, a fleet of bicycles can be purchased if you're doing like an in-school training program or something like that. We have some recommended project limits for non-infrastructure projects depending on the number of schools that you would be impacting with your program. These are not hard and fast. These are just sort of a recommendation. Obviously, we want the amount of money that you're requesting to be commensurate with the impact you're going to have. And so from our perspective, the more schools that you're going to be impacting with your programming, perhaps the more funding you would need to roll that out. So again, this is just guidance, but there still is a lot of opportunity to make your case for why, you know, you're proposing the project you're proposing and sort of letting us know what the impact would be. And, you know, we would, again, just be looking to sort of understand that the budget is reasonable for the impact that we are anticipating with the project. So moving on to infrastructure. So infrastructure projects obviously are also eligible for the program. Infrastructure projects have to be within 2 miles of a school. And we are accepting projects up to $1 million right now. We do recommend applications try to stick around $500,000 on average, but we're willing to consider up to $1 million for really, really comprehensive, really impactful projects. So up to $1 million is what we'll consider. I generally recommend trying to stick a little bit closer to that $500,000. Projects do have to be sponsored by the local jurisdiction that has maintenance authority. So if you're proposing a project on a city street, the applicant should be the city. If it's a village street, the applicant should be the village, so on and so forth. Construction funding is available in fiscal year 29, and funds are also available in earlier years for pre-construction phases, or if you are able to do construction earlier, you can let us know that and we might be able to provide funding in earlier years. We do have the ability to provide up to 100% of eligible costs, and funding is available for all phases of project development. So engineering, design, right-of-way, construction, and construction engineering, if you need it. Keep in mind that the request that you're making to the program is for, if you're requesting $500,000, it's for all of that. If you, let me say that another way. So you could, if you want, just apply for construction funds. And maybe you apply for $500,000 of construction. If you need more than that, that all needs to go into your total project cost. So if you need funds for all phases of development, just keep in mind that that total number is representing the funding that you need from the program for the entire project for which you are applying for funds. And then, just a couple of examples of common projects. Obviously, sidewalks, paths, bike lanes, crossing enhancements, RRFBs, pedestrian hybrid beacons, curb bump outs, just some common examples of infrastructure changes. And then also just wanted to point out that because these are federal funds, we are looking for projects that are sort of at least around like $300,000 to maybe $400,000. So we're not looking to fund really small projects. We really want this to be, worth the federal administration of these projects. So in general, we recommend that at a minimum, you're packaging together an infrastructure project that's at least $300,000 to $400,000. And I would say for, there's also different ways people package up projects for Safe Routes to School. If you are maybe doing a more like systemic project where you are proposing some lower cost improvements at a variety of intersections or something like that, it might be okay for you to be on that lower end of like the $300,000 minimum. If you're doing more of like a big sidewalk gap and it's a project that's going to require more like design and engineering and right of way, I would maybe stick to that higher end of $400,000 minimum for that bigger project that's going to have more like design and engineering and right of way costs. And then the other thing that might happen too is it's possible that you might be leveraging other federal programs for construction money. So for example, maybe you have a project that you are applying to like the LTAP program for construction, and it's impacting school connectivity. And so maybe you're coming to the Safe Routes to School program just for like the design and engineering portion of the project. That's possible. You could just apply to the program for the design of the project if you'd like. And because that project would already be federalized, this minimum number wouldn't be as important because the project is already federalized and it's already a larger project. So this guidance wouldn't be as relevant if you were only coming to the program for money to design your project, as long as the construction was already being funded by a federal source. And then I just wanted to put this on the screen because I did add, as much as the Safe Routes to School application remains very similar year to year, I did include a couple newer like charts in the application this year. So I just wanted to put that in front of you, but this is what it will look like for you to communicate to us which phases of funding you are looking for from the program. So this is where you would let us know, if you just need construction, you would just check the construction box in the fiscal year that you are going to be ready to construct your project. If you need funding for all phases, you would check every box on the schedule for which you would be able to complete that phase of the project. So this is kind of what that will look like. You're only going to be filling out information related to funding requested from the program. So if you have TAP money for construction and you're not asking for construction money, you don't need to check that box if you're just coming to us for like PE and detailed design. I'm going to pause and look at a couple questions just to see if I can knock any out. Okay. Question, could you use funds to purchase the signs over the crosswalk? I wonder if this is related to maybe when I showed this image. So this intersection actually already had an RRFB. RRFBs are eligible for the Safe Routes to School program. That would be something you would request through an infrastructure application. Whoops. Do parochial and charter schools count? I do get this question a lot. And I think the question is like, could you apply for a project that is going to impact a parochial or charter school? Yes, you can. And you can certainly include these types of schools in your school travel plan. And you can apply for and execute projects that would improve connectivity to parochial or to charter schools. I think what the couple nuances to that is that we won't reimburse a private entity for like a non-infrastructure project. So we wouldn't award a non-infrastructure project to like a private school and reimburse them for that project. And I think in general, it's these schools, again, can be eligible to do projects that are improving connectivity to them, but sometimes these schools are naturally not as eligible, or sorry, are naturally not as competitive, because sometimes these schools pull from a much larger geography. And so sometimes they just don't have as much of a potential impact when we look at the percent or number of students that live within 2 miles. So this program really weighs very heavily this like potential to walk and bike to school, which is you know, made up of how many students live within 2 miles. And so sometimes these private schools or charter schools just may not naturally have that density compared to other schools. And possibly, particularly for private schools, they may not have as much of the like economically disadvantaged student population as other schools. Obviously, that's unique to your school and your community, but just wanted to provide some of that input. For crossing guards, would the school have to apply for the non-infrastructure grant or would the village? Good question. We do really appreciate when schools apply to do kind of school related programming like crossing guards or other things like that. But we also understand that sometimes other partners can fill that role as well. So it could be either the village or the school applying for a non-infrastructure program to start up a crossing guard program. Whoever is just in a better position, I think, to kind of manage and implement the program. And again, with our non-infrastructure projects, these function on a reimbursement basis. And so, you know, we're happy to work with you on a routine reimbursement, but there will be a little bit of upfront purchasing or payment that will have to happen. So whoever maybe is in a better position to do that would be who would apply for that project. All right, might do one more. Okay, this is another similar one in terms of who should apply. Should the application for the project be completed by the school district or local jurisdiction with the appropriate maintenance authority. We have always heard the school district should initiate the application. So for infrastructure projects, the applicant should be the jurisdiction with the appropriate maintenance authority. So if you are looking to do an infrastructure project on a city street, we want the applicant to be the city. They would be the project sponsor, because they would be the entity that would be responsible for, you know, the maintenance of that facility into the future. Of course, there could be other like maintenance agreements that you work out locally, but we want to see that come from the appropriate maintenance authority. Okay, all right, I'm going to keep going. So, okay, we just covered just like the basics for non-infrastructure and for infrastructure. So let me just go over our small list of items that are ineligible. So, of course, any project that does not specifically serve the purpose of the Safe Routes to School program is not eligible. We also don't provide funding for like food or beverages or gift cards for food or beverage. So if you're looking to give out, you know, ice cream gift cards as an incentive to walk or bike, you'll have to leverage those from somewhere else. We cannot fund bicycles as giveaways. So again, if that's something you want to do, that's great. That might be a really great addition to your Safe Routes to School program, but you'd have to work with other local partners to leverage bicycles in other ways through grants or maybe donations or something like that. This comes up a lot too. We cannot provide funding for giveaways with no safety or educational value. So a lot of times we'll see people requesting a lot of t-shirts or even like supplies that they can give kids to help them walk or bike to school, like hats, shoes, like just things people need to walk or bike to school. But we can't provide funding for those items if they don't have a safety connection or they don't have like an educational connection. We also can't provide reoccurring costs at 100% for programs. So the Crossing Guard program is a good example of that. We can provide money in the first year to get your program started. We cannot continue to provide 100% funding for the same program that is impacting the same schools in the same way. So that you'll have to kind of demonstrate more local investment after the first year if you do plan to request ongoing funds for that in the future, or if you were like expanding your program into many other schools, that could keep you eligible for 100% funding from the program. This comes up a lot also, projects that are reorganizing pickup or drop off, primarily to like change flow or kind of just for the convenience of drivers or just the convenience of like the drop off flow, rather than to specifically improve safety for students walking and biking. So there's really very few pickup and drop off reorganization projects that would be eligible and competitive through this program. We also cannot fund educational programs that are primarily focused on bus safety, and we cannot fund projects that make improvements to bus stops, because again, this program is very honed in, very focused specifically on getting kids walking and biking from their home to school. And we also will not fund projects whose only purpose is to upgrade curb ramps to be ADA compliant or to replace or provide school zone signage. That comes up a lot as well. You know, I think there's a lot of need across the state, like communities are grappling with, you know, the need to upgrade their curb ramps to be ADA compliant. They're missing school zone signage, or their school zone signage needs to be replaced. This program is not really here to help you with those aspects, but obviously if you were to apply for like a sidewalk connection or something like that, that project would need to be ADA compliant, and you could include some upgrades as related to the project as part of that application. Same with school zone signage. If you're doing a big infrastructure project and in the vicinity, there's like a location where you need that signage, we would consider allowing that as a small part of a much bigger infrastructure project. But we are not looking for projects that are mostly school zone signage, and that does come up frequently. Okay, and then overall, when we're looking to score these applications, you can find a detailed scoring rubric again on our website in our 2026 application guidance. Each application has a scoring rubric and lists the required attachments. But just in general, you know, these are the 5 things we're really looking at. We're looking at connectivity, how these projects are going to connect students to school, safety, you know, information on like current safety issues and how this project's going to improve safety. We're also looking at need. So looking at the percent of economically disadvantaged students, because you know, these families might be relying more on walking and biking or have less access to vehicles or, you know, things like that. We do really emphasize need as part of prioritizing these funds. And then trips. So we are looking to understand, are kids currently walking and biking? Or is there a big opportunity to get more kids walking and biking? And so we are looking very heavily at that kind of percent and number of students within 2 miles to help us understand potential, you know, trips. And then finally, community commitment. Like, we just want to make sure that communities are committed to kind of the Safe Routes to School program in general, that they're working together to move the needle on kids walking, biking to school safely, and really have the capacity to implement the project successfully. So I think in a nutshell, that's what we're looking for when we score projects. I'm going to pause and look at some questions again. Let's see if I skipped any. And if I don't get to all of these, or if I need to put together a more robust answer, we could also maybe do that over email afterwards. If you have an active TAP application that has not been funded yet, do you apply for the design engineering costs now or after it's been decided that you get funded? Oh, I see. Yeah, so TAP applications were due in November. Yeah, I would say if you have an active, like if you've just submitted an application this past round and you haven't heard yet, but you are interested in seeking design and engineering costs from the Safe Routes to School program, I would go ahead and apply. And I think internally, from a timing perspective, we would know as we are deciding this if TAP is awarding that project. So yes, I would definitely get your application in if you want to be considered. Okay, the other question, if an applicant wanted to invest in adding personnel like crossing guards, is that ineligible as a reoccurring cost? Yes, and I know this is confusing. I hope that if there's more questions on this, I'm happy to talk to you on a case-by-case basis. So if you need to add personnel like crossing guards to, you know, facilitate a crossing guard program, you could, if you wanted to, depending on how much that costs, because we do have limits in terms of project costs. You could apply for those costs to be reimbursed by ODOT in the first year. So we could help cover the materials you need. We could help reimburse personnel for their time. We could support the training that you need to do. But we cannot pay for all of that year in and year out. You could only request 100% funding again if you were expanding your program to like different schools to expand your impact. So it is ineligible to it would be ineligible to apply year after year for personnel costs like crossing guards, yes. Okay, so a few tips I put together recently, and some of this might be a little bit repetitive to some of the things I've talked about, but that can be helpful too, I think. So things we love to see, and this came up a little bit. We hosted a Show Me the Money a couple weeks ago, and this was a question, was like, what are things you love to see? So just put together a few things that I think the committee really loves to see from applicants. We love to see communities that are working on both infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects. We just really love to see that people are coming at this from both perspectives, that they're engaging people in these different ways. And yeah, so that's really great. Whether you're seeking that from ODOT or whether you're doing that with local funds, doesn't really matter. Obviously, we love to see comfortable facilities that serve the youth. So, we're looking for wider, comfortable facilities, really designing for forgiveness. These are, young students. And so, simply striping a bike lane is likely not enough for this audience. We're looking for that more separated or at least buffered type of facility, paths that allow people to walk and bike comfortably. So, we're not looking to do like the bare minimum here. We really want to see facilities that are going to be comfortable for that K through 12 audience, whether that's like families going with their young students or some of those like middle school to high school students who might be traveling on their own. So just keep that in mind. A question did come in about a match, and if we score that, like if we give you bonus points for having a match. We do like to see a local contribution or leveraged funding when you're able to do that. So if you're a community who has the ability to provide a match and put some skin in the game, we really do like to see that. And it can also help, kind of right size your application to some extent if you're, everything's sort of like a cost benefit. So if you're able to reduce the cost by contributing locally and we're still getting the same impact, we do love to see that. But we do have the opportunity to provide up to 100% funding. So if you are a community that can't do that, it's not gonna hurt you to not bring a match to the table. But for communities who can, we do love to see that. Obviously, we require plans in order to be eligible because we really want to see that the project that you are applying for is a priority in your community, that has been developed with community input. So we like to see a strong tie between what you're applying for and kind of what those issues and priorities are from your plan. And you'll see in the application, we do ask you to either, you can attach your plan or you can just attach like the portion of your plan where the project you're applying for is identified. And so, yeah, we like to connect those dots. And then something else that's really important to us is just a really strong understanding of the project, your scope, your schedule, and your cost. And if there are like any risks involved in your project, you really need to address those in your narrative and talk about how you are going to mitigate some of those risks, because at the end of the day, it's really difficult. It's really impossible for us to provide funding for a project if we don't feel confident about the schedule or the cost. We also love to see projects that fill gaps and complete connections to school. We love to see enhanced crossing opportunities. When we think about like pedestrian and bicyclist safety, we know that there's two big things: walking along the road and trying to get across the road. So we love to see filling those gaps and then making it really, really, really more comfortable and more safe to cross the road. So, stripe, crosswalk marking, signs, signals, median islands, raised crossings, lightning, the whole shebang. We love to see those types of improvements. Managing speeds or volumes around schools, we love to see that too. Anything that really slows people down, makes it difficult to create an unsafe environment, we are interested in. Where possible, like we love funding paths. These shared use paths help kids that are both walking and biking, which is great, and I think kind of maximizes impact. and systemic safety projects, so making multiple improvements throughout the vicinity of a school. We love to do projects like that as well. So for example, bundling together many enhanced crosswalks for, all of your key intersections is just like an example of a great project. Things to be wary of: majority school zone signage projects, majority replacement or maintenance projects. You can apply for portions of your sidewalk to be like removed and replaced if they're really at the end of their useful life, but we are likely going to prioritize projects that include filling gaps, adding in new sections. So I would recommend not submitting for a project that is entirely like replacement of deteriorating sidewalks. But it can be part of that. But we would want to see some other like major improvements happening, like maybe some really enhanced crossing opportunities at either end of that project, or like a small additional gap, something like that. So I'd be wary of majority maintenance projects. School parking lot changes, mainly to reorganize the flow of traffic. I've already covered this a little bit, but it really does come up a lot. And, I would say in general, the committee is really prioritizing connections to school more than like parking lot changes. But there could be a compelling like on school property infrastructure project for sure, if it's like that last piece to get people to the front door. But yeah, just be aware of that. That would have to be a very compelling project. Any projects focused primarily on connecting students to and from the bus stop. This comes up a lot, and obviously it might be an important project to make sure that kids have facilities along their bus stop routes. But unless your project is really fully connecting kids to school, we are not going to prioritize projects simply connecting kids to the bus stop. Again, it may be a really important project from a safety perspective or connectivity perspective, but we will have to prioritize projects that are going to be completing the connection to school. And then, yeah, projects that aren't completing a connection to school now or in the very near future. So if you're applying for a sidewalk that, even if the sidewalk is built, no more students are fully able to access the school, that probably will not rank as highly for us. We're looking for projects that are going to help complete that connection to school, or maybe there's like another project that's programmed that's going to complete that connection very, very soon after, or something like that. Okay, last few things, just very specifically wanted to cover how to apply, and then we'll spend the rest of the time on questions. So the application is due March 6th. This is the first Friday in March next year. When you go to the main webpage, you'll click on apply for Safe Routes to School. You'll click on the Safe Routes to School application links. It'll take you to this page, which right now only has the school travel plan application listed, but when you go there in January, it'll list all 3 applications: the school travel plan application, infrastructure, and non-infrastructure, and you'll click on these to actually launch the application. This is the same web page where we also post sample ordinances, which is a required attachment. So if you need a sample ordinance to use as a basis to get like your council to, approve you to apply on behalf of the local for this funding, you can use this template as a starting point. And then once you execute that, you can attach it to your application. When you get into the online application, this is our like form stack application. This is just a quick snapshot of what it looks like. You can save content in here, but it only saves for 30 days from the last time you edit it. So just know that, if you come in here and you start filling out some narrative and then you don't come back for 30 days, you're going to lose your information. And then additionally, do not attach anything until you're ready to hit submit, because attachments cannot be saved in the application. Only like narrative and selections can be saved. And so as you prepare to apply, check out our list of required attachments so you can start compiling these in a folder and, having everything you need. For infrastructure, you'll upload a portion of your plan, a letter of support. If you are within a regional planning organization like an MPO or an RTPO, we do require a letter of support from them. And if you are a township, we do require a letter of support from your county. You'll upload a project countermeasure map. This is basically just showing us what your project is in map form. So, you know, a line for a sidewalk and a star for an RFB, it could be simple. Or if you have project plans you want to submit, you can do that too. But we just want to be able to look at the map and understand where your project is, kind of in the vicinity of the school. You could use your 2-mile radius map as a base for this if it makes sense. That's not required. You'll upload a photo of existing conditions. We need a certified cost estimate, so stamped by an engineer. It needs to include project phases, contingency, and inflation. This might be something that your ODOT, if you wanted to get some feedback from your ODOT district Safe Routes to School coordinator on, this might be something to flag for them to do a quick review of for any red flags. Your disadvantaged student information, your 2-mile radius maps. We also ask for proof of progress, which is just some sort of proof that you've been advancing your Safe Routes to School work locally. Meeting notes, photo of a walk to school day, something like that. And then the ordinance. And then again, this is slightly new for the infrastructure application. Instead of uploading a budget breakdown, you'll indicate which phases of funding you're looking for in what fiscal year. And then you can also include how much money you're requesting from the program, and you can list other funds that are coming from somewhere else. So if you are only requesting construction from the program, we want to know who's funding these other phases and like ballpark costs. Same thing for non-infrastructure, a similar, slightly smaller list of required attachments. Notably, if the applicant is not the school, a letter of support from the relevant school is needed. You'll have a project budget, and then these other items are mostly the same. And then the school travel plan request, you can apply for either reimbursement money funding, or you can apply for just ODOT's planning assistance, where we just provide a consultant and we pay the bill and you don't have to do any of that. So if you are applying for reimbursement, you would include a cost estimate. If you're not, you don't need a cost estimate. And then if you don't have your 2-mile radius maps developed, you don't have to for the school travel planning assistance. But you do have to submit your anonymous student address data so that we can make the maps. So if you can either submit your student address data, or you can submit a 2-mile radius map if you've already developed it. Okay, and I'm gonna skip my key program resources and go right to questions. But basically right now, if you're thinking, I'm super interested in applying, right now you should just be confirming that you have an approved plan in place. So talk with your district Safe Routes to School coordinators. You can find them online to the right in green on this website. And you might want to begin local legislation to apply, and then by March 6th, you should have your application in, and we plan to notify local applicants in June. So I will skip ahead to questions. Oh, and here's the list of district Safe Routes to School coordinators. Okay. Okay, what exactly is the scoring committee? Yeah, so we have a selection committee made up of staff across different programs at ODOT, so safety and TAP and planning. And we also include reps from the different districts to review all of these projects, score them, and also just discuss which ones we're recommending for funding. Is a sidewalk project eligible if it connects the school building to an off-site after-school program like a teenage center? Great question. I would say, again, unless your project is connecting students from home to school in some way, it would not be eligible. So connecting your school to an off-site after-school program, if that is not also providing connectivity for students to get home, then it would not be eligible for the program. Another question is related to working through a construction project that is going to go through multiple jurisdictions. That's a good question. So if your project starts in one city, but then it's going to cut through another city and then back into your city just because of like weird jurisdictional boundaries, we would probably need, at a minimum, a letter of support from the other community that would be impacted. And then we might need to like add in an additional project agreement or something with that city. So it's not a deal breaker for the project at all, but I would say at a minimum, we would need that letter of support from that other city to know that it's going to be smooth sailing just logistically as we deliver the project, and you know that the construction contractor can go onto their property to build, the sidewalk or whatever it is. Let's see. A couple questions about state routes are coming in. If our target project is on a state route, who should apply? We have an ODOT approved active transportation plan with a Safe Routes to School component. Good question. I would definitely reach out to the district about this. If it's a project that the locals wanting to advance, I do think it's possible you could apply for that project. And that would be something to coordinate with the district to make sense, to see if it makes sense for you to apply, who that maintenance authority would be moving forward. And then another question, sort of along the same lines, would ODOT be the jurisdiction for the maintenance of a facility if the crossing for the school is a state route? So it would just depend. In Ohio, local, like cities and villages, are actually responsible for state routes inside of their jurisdiction. So it would just depend. If it's inside of the city or village, it would be the city or village that would be the maintenance authority. If it's outside of the city or village, it would probably fall to ODOT unless you guys needed to come up with an alternative maintenance agreement. So again, I'd reach out to the district about that and see what might make sense to advance as a local Safe Routes to School project. And then who would you need to contact at ODOT? Who would you contact to make ODOT aware of the need for a school crossing on a state route? So that's something you could bring up to your ODOT district Safe Routes to School coordinator to make them aware. Okay, let's see. We have a dangerous intersection that needs pedestrian and bicycle improvements that was part of an oil and shale application that was not funded. Should we do that as Safe Routes to School? Maybe if that intersection is within 2 miles of a school and you have a plan in place that outlines that that project is a priority for school connectivity, that's potentially eligible for Safe Routes to School. It could also be eligible for other types of funds too. It could be something you look to get funded through the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which, I mean, if you're describing this as a dangerous intersection where ped bike improvements are needed, that's certainly something you might be able to have funded through the Highway Safety Program. There's 3 ways to request funding through that program: our systemic application, our abbreviated application, and then the formal application. So you could check out that program for more information. Would applicants pursuing both infrastructure and non-infrastructure projects need to submit separate applications for each? Yes. So yep, there is a non-infrastructure application and there's an infrastructure application, and you should submit each one if you're looking to do each of those projects. And that's important because there's sort of different information we're collecting from each. There would be, you know, your certified cost estimate for the infrastructure side of the world, and then there'd be kind of a different project budget that you would outline for your non-infrastructure project. What do we need to do, and what information would we need to request a school radius map as a local public agency? Okay, so a couple of things that ODOT can provide to you. One of them is mapping assistance. If you provide the anonymous student address data, we can develop these maps for you. So if you're interested in a 2-mile radius map, you can send this data to this email right here, saferoutestoschool.data@dot.ohio.gov. And this is going to be an Excel sheet with all of this information for every student. So this is what you'll need to gather, and you'll send it to this email and just let us know which schools you are looking for maps, and we can develop those for you. And I would recommend making that request by February 1st so that we have enough time to get everything done before the application is due. All right, well, I know we're at time, so if there's other questions that are left, I can try to get in touch with you after the fact, but thanks so much for joining, and hoping to read some great applications next year.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. All right, so that's all the time we have for our questions today. So on behalf of ODOT and Ohio LTAP, I'd like to thank Kate once again for sharing her valuable knowledge and expertise with us. As I mentioned earlier, the recording of this webinar will be shared with all registered attendees. Before you leave, we'd really appreciate your feedback. A very short 4-question survey will automatically launch in your browser once the webinar ends. It only takes a minute, and your input helps us improve future sessions. Thank you all so much for attending, and we hope you found this webinar informative and engaging. Have a wonderful rest of your day.